Okay, so in this next video, this is like the third video of scales and theory that we really need to learn. We're going to focus on several lessons. This will be the first of many on what's called movable scale patterns. Now, these are patterns that can be moved around the fretboard at ease because they don't have open strings. So basically, once you learn a pattern, whatever type of scale or mode, which you're going to learn, it is, you can just move it up and down the fretboard and start on any note you want and change the key. It's very useful for improvising, very useful for getting incorporated into your reading, so you can stop just reacting to one place that you may play a note, but you play that note in several different places on the guitar. So this first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn what's called the relative modes of the C major scale. Now, the first thing, let's talk about a mode. So a relative mode, imagine if we had this C major scale we had earlier. We know that one. So it went from C to C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? And it was just up and down, nothing to it. But what if, instead of starting on C, we played the exact same notes, all naturals, but went from D to D? What that does, it actually makes a different scale. And each one of these different scales can be found on each one of the 7 different notes of the major scale. They all have different names, different colors in terms of their interval content, which make them all sound different and unique. And they all spell things called chords that will play as arpeggios at the end of the lesson. So, and chords too as well. So let's start with this first example, the C major mode. Now, all these modes have Greek names as well. The major mode can also be called the Ionian mode. Ionia is like a region in ancient Greece. And so all these modes have a ancient Greek mode name as well. So there's C Ionian. Notice how in this form of scale, the one we like to use in jazz, I play straight eighth notes. They're not straight eighth notes, they're swung eighth notes. And for the scale to work out, we have to go all the way up to the 9th note, or which is called a compound interval, because intervals above an octave or an eighth are called compound intervals, and they end up just being the same. Like, for instance, a 9th is the same as the 2nd. The 2nd note was a D, the 9th note, the top note, was also a D. And that works the same. A compound interval, a 3rd would be a 10th, a 4th would be an 11th, and so forth. A 5th, a 12th, and a 6th could be a 13th. And we'll see more of that when we start to spell chords. But for right now, just know all these scales go up to the 9th. Look at the pattern of the intervals. This is a great one to start with. Notice major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th, octave, and then major 9th up there up top. And notice the use of the shift to get up there. Remember, I delay the shift as long as I can. So that way the shift is kind of different going up than it is going down. Work on it like that, and that's how you'll do it. Okay, now let's go up and start on the 5th fret, on the D note. This will be the Dorian mode. Notice the scale sounds much starker because the interval content is much different. We have a minor 3rd as opposed to major 3rd. There's 3 types of modes: major, minor, and diminished. The major modes have a major chord, or 1, major 3rd, and a perfect 5th in them, like that first, the C Ionian. Because it has the major 3rd and a perfect 5th, which makes up the major triad. The minor modes have a root, a minor 3rd, and a perfect 5th. And some other notes. So that D Dorian is our first, what's called minor mode. If we go up to the E on the 7th fret, here's our next minor mode. It's called the Phrygian mode. This one's great because we don't need to shift anything. Nice and easy. Notice the root, minor third, and perfect fifth inside of the scale gives us that minor triad. That's why it's a minor mode. All right, let's go up to the F, starting on the 2nd finger on the 8th fret. This one will be a major type of mode. It's the F Lydian mode. So you want to learn that pattern. Notice the F Lydian is a lot like the F major scale, but that 4th note is up a half step. Something we'll compare a little bit more later. And notice also it's got that major triad in it. It's a major type mode. Now let's go to the next one. It's G Mixolydian. Once again, it's a lot like the major one, but the 7th note is a little different. If you compare those charts of those fingerboard diagrams, you'll see that very clearly. Notice the major triad, 1, 3, and 5 inside there. Makes that G Mixolydian a major mode. All right, let's go up to A minor. Notice the minor triad makes A minor a minor mode. Also notice the Greek name for the minor mode is Aeolian. Not alien, Aeolian. Everybody says that one wrong. It's Aeolian. And finally, the last mode on the B is the most unsettling of the modes because it is neither major or minor. It spells what's called the diminished triad with the 1, 3, and the 5 because you have a root, a minor third, and a diminished fifth, or a tritone, not a perfect fifth. So that's why it has that kind of unsettling, unstable sound that wants to really resolve back to C major, where we started, but we're just up an octave. So what you want to do is you want to combine all these together into one exercise. And then just go to the next one. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then up to G. Up to A. Then to B. And then C. Once you can do that and you memorize the patterns, then you're ready to go on and learn the next bit. So notice all of these started on the A string, right? Now, what if we wanted to do, these are movable patterns, right? But what if we wanted to start on a note on the E string? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to end up playing the 9th note, sometimes on the high G, in these scales. So let's start all over again, but in G on the 3rd fret of the low E string. So here's G Ionian. Notice we didn't have to shift for the 9th note because it was available to us on the high G string. Same thing with the Dorian mode. Notice we didn't have to shift because we had that note available. Phrygian, we won't need to shift at all. We didn't have to do that one last time. Lydian, once again, no shift because we have it right there. Mixolydian. Minor or Aeolian. And then Locrian, same pattern. And then the G is nice because we don't need the shift for the 9th. So what you want to do is get those down just like you did the ones in C major. Just be able to play up and down the patterns and memorize the names of the modes, whether a major or minor or that diminished mode, the seventh mode, and their names. Now the next exercises are really going to help us be able to compare the modes to each other. Because here's what we're going to do. We're going to order the modes to where we play all 7 modes, but we start on the same note. So instead of playing like C major, then C Dorian, then E Phrygian, etc., we're going to play C Lydian, then C Ionian or major, then C Mixolydian. And we're going to do it in what's called the order of brightness and darkness, okay? So the brightest mode is the Lydian mode. And the reason is because the interval content adds up to the most. If you think about it in terms of intervals, right? Remember how we did that exercise in that lesson where we found the simple chromatic intervals? Well, if you add all those distances up in a single scale, the one with the highest amount of interval content or the largest intervals are going to make what's called the brightest scale. And in this case, the major scale is only beaten out by the Lydian scale because it has that sharp 4th note. So it's just one note brighter than that major scale. So we'll start with that one. And then we'll go to the major scale next. Then the Mixolydian scale, which is just one note different. Then the Dorian, which is one note different, the 3rd note changes. Then the minor mode, the 6th note changes. The Phrygian note, the 2nd note gets lowered. The Locrian mode, the 5th note gets lowered. And then at this point, you can go up a half step and do all that in D flat if you wanted to keep going, okay? So here's another thing that will help this exercise. Remember the order of our key signatures, like on the circle of fifths with the sharps and the flats? So the first sharp in a key signature was F sharp. We know this because the order of flat sharps is opposite of the order of flats. So the order of flats is B, E, A, D, G, C, F. And so the order of sharps will be just the opposite, that's starting with the F. So notice when we play C Lydian, the one accidental we had is that F sharp. So if we strip that away, it's kind of the same as adding a flat, but before we can add flats, you have to take away sharps, right? So if we take that F sharp away, we get C major, all naturals. So what's the first flat in the key signature? Oh, it's B flat. So let's change the B to a B flat. It's C Mixolydian. It's all in order. The next flat is E flat. That's C Dorian. A flat is the next flat. C Aeolian minor. D flat, you get C Phrygian. And then G flat is the next flat, you get that C Locrian. So notice the order of sharps and flats can also be practiced as you practice these parallel modes of the major scale. And remember the order of brightness to darkness. And another quick little cool note about these, the one that you could call the most neutral mode, it's very interesting, is the Dorian mode, because it's kind of in the middle. You know, you got the 3 major modes up top, and then you got the Dorian, and then 2 more minors, and a diminished on the bottom. So it means the one in the middle is the Dorian. What's really interesting about the interval content of the Dorian is it's completely symmetrical. Look at that on your own time and tell me what you think about that. A symmetrical scale means if you play it forwards and backwards, it gives you the same intervals. It reflects on itself. And you can find this in several modes, but the Dorian one is specifically interesting, has maximal evenness. Okay, let's do the same thing we just did with the C parallel modes, but let's do it out of G. So we'll start with G Lydian. G major. G Mixolydian. Here's G Dorian. Here's G minor. G Phrygian. G Locrian. And there we go. We got the brightest to the darkest mode right there. All right, now we've gotten through relative modes. We've talked about parallel modes. Let's get those clear before we move on. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that G major relative modes, and we're going to make the triads out of each one of them. Remember the 1, 3, and the 5. So if it's got a root 1, a major third, and a perfect fifth, it's like a major triad or from a major mode. If it's got the minor third, it's going to be a minor triad from a minor mode. You'll see it in this example as we go up, and you'll be able to see the triad inside of the scale pattern, even if you wanted to go back. So here we go. We got G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, and G major again. So this is like an arpeggio inside of a scale. It's really nice. It's a good exercise. It really helps get your chops going and gives you more clarity in terms of being able to visualize the notes in one scale pattern. So let's expand this idea of triads, and instead of just a 1, 3, and 5 of every motor scale, let's add on top of it a seventh. So now we'll have a 1, 3, and a 5, and either a major seventh or a minor seventh. Remember, the octave is a good shape to refer because a major second or major seventh is only going to be a half step below an octave, and a minor seventh a whole step below. And that'll come in handy as we define these seventh chords. Okay, here we go. Here's the major seventh chord off of the G. So a major 7 is just a major triad with a major 7 added to it. Here's a minor 7 chord, or a minor 7 as a minor chord with a minor 7. So here's A minor 7. Same thing up on B, B minor 7. Okay, here's C major 7. Same pattern as G. Okay, this next one is just D7. So this, just a regular 7, or also known as a dominant 7, is a major triad with a flat 7 or a minor 7. Put that one again. So that's going to be a D dominant 7. These people call it a dominant 7 because the dominant is also what's called like the 5th note of the major scale, and sure enough, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That D is that 5th note, so the triad or the 7th chord makes dominant 7. All right, and then here's another minor 7, E minor 7. And now this next one is called an F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Well, that's kind of confusing because it's a diminished triad with a minor 7. Or you could call it, well, it's a minor 7 chord with a flat 5th, a diminished 5th. If you compare like this one to the E below it, you'll see that. That note is one note lower. Another name for this 7th chord rather is a half diminished chord. It's what it goes by in theoretical terms. But a lot of times in chord charts, you'll see this a half diminished chord written as a minor 7 flat 5. Beautiful sound. And then G major 7 again. So now that we've built chords, triads, we've had 7s, we've got 7 chords. Now let's define, if we add another note above the 7th and a skip, add the 9. So here we go. Here's the major 7. If you add the 9, it turns into a major 9. If you add the 9 to the A minor 7 chord, that's an A minor 9. Now this B is going to be a little different because the 9th is all of a sudden a flat 9 or a minor 9th. So you would call this a chord B minor 7 flat 9. Then the C turns into C major 9. Now the D, that was just D7, well, it just turns into D9. E is going to be a E minor 9, just like the A. And then this is going to be that half diminished chord, or the minor 7 flat 5 added with a flat 9. And then finally you're back to G major 9 again. So be able to play those up and down, follow the logic in your mind of when we added the 9 to that either major 7, dominant 7, or minor 7, or minor 7 flat 5, what it became, you know. You want to keep good track of those things. Okay, so after 9th chords, we can add another extension above that, and those are called 11th chords. Some of these you don't see very much because they're theoretical. Let's look at this first one, G major 11. You'll hardly ever see a G major 11 chord like that. You hardly ever see a major 11 with a perfect 4th in there because those two notes, the major 7th and the 11th, make a tritone that sounds really bad. So you don't really see that chord very much. It's kind of more of a theoretical thing. Now minor 11 you see a lot. This is minor 11. Very good chord for jazz. And then you get B. This is this B minor 7 flat 9 add 11. Sometimes when you see that 11, you see it as an add. And then C, you get C major 9 with a sharp 11. It's that sharp 11. Sharp 11, remember, because there's a C Lydian, had that sharp 4th. Well, 4th is the same thing as an 11th. And here's a D11. E minor 11, just the same shape as the A minor. And then if we add an 11 to this, it's really a theoretical thing. At this point, you're just practicing building thirds. And then finally, the first one we started with up an octave. And then finally, if you want to get all 7 notes of a mode in here, you can spell 13 chords. So you can get a D, or start back on G, and you can get the 13 in here. Notice we played all 7 notes, but instead of going up in steps, we've gone them in thirds. And you can do this with any scale. If you want to play in 4ths or 5ths, 6ths or 7ths, eventually if you go around, you'll end up playing all 7 notes. But in this way, we stack them in thirds so we can see them a little bit more and learn more about them in a more practical sense. Okay, here's the one out of A, Dorian. This is a A minor 13 chord. Notice the 13th is that major 6, not a minor 6. Here's the pattern out of B, more of a theoretical chord here. Here's a C major 13 sharp 11. Here's D13. minor 11 with a flat 13 because it's got a minor 6 or a flat 13. The theoretical chord off this Locrian. And this final one, I've got to play the high E. If you don't have the 21st fret, you've only got 20 frets on your bass like me, you have to play an artificial harmonic. So watch this. So what I did, and since I ran out of notes, I couldn't, I don't have that note, right? Because I don't have a fret for the high. I just have an E flat and not an E. So what I did is I played this E right here on the 14th fret on the D string, and then I put my first finger on my right hand, what would be 12 frets above it, and then I plucked it with my third finger when I needed it. So it would be. You can incorporate that to kind of extend the range of your bass in a creative way. That's a really good little trick there that a lot of people use. Okay, so now that we've explored building scales in thirds, in addition to just playing scales step to step or in seconds, we've got a lot of theoretical knowledge. But before we go on to playing chords, I want to try to play with these what are called 2-5-1 major key centers. So basically, the way these work is you find a scale or key that you want to play in. Like this first, what we're going to learn here is C. So we got to play a 2-5-1. So if you know their modes already, you'll know the second mode of a major scale is that Dorian scale. So if we're in C, we're looking for D Dorian, the second note. So 2-5, and now we have 5. What's the fifth note of C major? Well, it's that G, the mode of G Mixolydian. And then 1, of course, is the major scale itself. So there's a couple ways that we can get around this 2-5-1 key center pattern. I'll show you both. One that starts on the A string and one where it starts on the E string. Here's the one that starts on the A string. We'll call it type A. So here's our 2-5-1 in C. Starts on D Dorian. Then G Mixolydian. C major. Now here it is, type B starting on the low E. Here's G Mixolydian. And C major. You want both of these patterns. That way you never run out of room, and you can always find a place that's comfortable to play all 12 of these major key centers no matter what note you start on. And once you get these patterns down, you won't even have to think about what key center you're in, because you can just work it and work it and work at the same pattern, just move them up and down in half steps until they feel really comfortable and are kind of memorized. All right, now I want to go back to the C major scale and look at things called melodic patterns. So melodic patterns are things that are like scales that have a very easy kind of followable pattern but can give us a little more flexibility in working out of a scale. Let's look at this first one. It's a melodic pattern, what's called thirds. So it's a scale, but instead of just going up and down like that, every note is followed by its third that's above it. On the way down, it's about a third that's below it. You put it together, you get. Now, it's not just enough to learn the majors and pattern in the thirds. Go do the same thing in like the Dorian pattern. Even like the Mixolydian pattern. And really get those modes and those patterns all worked out. Here's another really popular pattern, very big in jazz circles. So basically we're going to go up the scale like we normally did up to the 9, and then when we come down, we're going to come down the 9 chord, which is 9, 7, 5, 3, 2, 1. It's a nice example. Kind of combines the 9 chord arpeggios we learned and the scale and kind of melds them together. And once again, do these in all the modes. You know, don't skip any. You could even play a 2-5-1 like that. Here's another melodic pattern. I call these like groups of 4s, or really kind of a powerful exercise. Try it again. So you want to practice that one in all those different modes and places too, just exhaustive. Now this next example is a really fun example. If you look at it carefully, you'll notice there's a major scale inside of it. If you look at the notes that are on the beats, not the upbeats, but the first note of every eighth note beam, you'll see a major scale. And if there's a whole step there, you'll see on the upbeat that there's a half step in between. If it's a natural half step, you'll see that it goes around that note and then goes to that half step. It's one of those you kind of have to practice a lot to get in your ear, and then you kind of learn the logic of it after you've played it a couple weeks. So this one is a scale I learned from an old piano player, jazz legend named Barry Harris. It goes like this. Notice you can hear inside of that major scale. Pretty cool stuff. Now, let's finish off with some chords. Now, bassists don't usually play chords, but we're going to go ahead and do that. This will help you see the shapes more quickly as you have to identify, more than one note at the same time and play it at the same time. So it really kind of helps your brain speed things up as you learn. Here's a C major chord scale. C major, D minor, here's E minor, here's F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. And then you can just go on back down the scale. A couple things to notice in here. Once you find the pattern, so if you remember the modes, the first, the fourth, and the fifth mode, or the major, the Lydian, and the mixed Lydian were all major type modes. So those shapes, 1, 4, and 5, are going to be that major shape with the root, the major third, and the perfect fifth. The notes on 2, 3, and 6 are also the same shape on the D, E, and the A minor. And that was respectively the Dorian, Phrygian, and the Aeolian, or the minor scale, all minor modes. And then that one different one, that diminished shape, is going to be on that B note. The second thing I want you to notice about this is it's like playing 3 scales at once. So notice, if you notice, we go up one note on each string to get to the next chord. So it's kind of like you can focus on any one of the 3 notes and find at least one of the right notes if you know the scale on one string of C major up and down. That'll really help you learn this pattern. What we can do is do the same chord scale, but now start on the low E string. And when I run out of room, I'll go ahead and go down G there. So notice when I get past the 12th fret and I can go back to the 1st fret, I'll go ahead and restart there. Notice again. So C, D minor, E minor. Now, instead of playing that right here, this G, I'm going to go and play it there because I can. One thing, a little tip about making chords cleaner on a bass is play close to the bridge with your right hand. The brighter sound will give you more clarity. If you play too dark, it just sounds like a jumbled mess. The brightness will make things very clear for you. And here we go. Let's talk about 7th chords. Now, not only are these going to be 7th chords, they're going to be what's called shell voicings. Now, a shell voicing is a 7th chord or a 6th chord that doesn't have a 5th in the chord, so we're omitting the 5th. So these first set of shell voicings are going to be a root, a 3rd, and then a 7th because we don't have the 5th. So here's C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B minor 7, and C major 7. Nice chord scale there. Notice on the B we didn't get any diminished stuff like we normally get because that 5th is not there. So it just becomes a root, a minor 3rd, and a minor 7, which kind of gives us that minor 7 sound just like they did on the A, the E, and the D. All right, let's look at the last example here. It's a chord scale going up the C major scale. This one is a little different. It's got a root, a 7th, and then a 10th, which is a compound version of a 3rd. So here's C major 7, D minor. Now I've got room, so I'm going to go ahead and go down to F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B minor 7, and then back to C major 7. Notice playing close to the bridge again helps clean all of that up. Now this is a big lesson. There's a lot of different ideas and concepts that you really have to learn deeply in this lesson in terms of your technique. This is usually the point in a lot of bass players growing where they really start to get a lot of instinct and their chops about where they are in the bass, or a lot of feel, I call for the bass, where they don't have to look as much about their left hand as they play. This is really helpful. So, you know, I've got some things for sight reading that will be coming out, but the thing is, the biggest thing is most guitar players and bass players have trouble reading because their eyes are too consumed with playing the instrument itself. And that makes sense. Piano players get in this trouble too. Drum set players not as much, but kind of. But because there's this spatial environment that we have to play the instrument in, we kind of have to look. It's not like it's a horn where it's on our face and we can feel every key on our fingers. We really have to have a feel of the instrument. And these movable scale patterns are really good for that. So if you're one of these people that has trouble reading, figure out, do I have trouble really reading and not knowing the rhythms and the notes? Because you can work on that. Or do I have trouble keeping my eyes on the music because I'm always lost and I feel like I'm in no man's land and have little or no confidence to where I'm at? I encourage you to practice these things with good technique. You know, don't be playing in the middle of the fret. Always play close to the bottom of the fret. But just try to take your eyes away and do all that by feel. Really try to feel where you are on the neck. So you're not looking at it like this, you know, but you're playing in a good position all the time where you can see a music stand and follow along.